Today I'm showing how I turned this weedy slope into a beautiful garden. Hey guys, DIY Bree here. The strip of land I was working on was several feet deep and behind my grandparents' fence. It's still part of their property, but it's not fenced into their yard. And so it's an area where weeds flourish. And so the neighbors usually just mow down their area a few times throughout the summer to keep it maintained. Otherwise, the city gets upset because it becomes a fire hazard. So I thought I could take advantage of that little spot and plant something pretty, maybe grow some food, and I was really excited. It's almost 50 feet long and maybe 5 or so inches or feet deep. So actually a pretty nice piece of land. I have to access it by walking kind of around the block, which isn't a big deal. I was excited to see what I could do with it. So I attempted to take on that whole strip of land, which turned out to be much more problematic than I had anticipated. I knew it would be hard, but the first method we tried to address the weeds and get the bed ready was the cardboard method. So my husband was able to get a bunch of cardboard from work and we laid it down all over. But we started with a section, maybe like a quarter of the piece, to kind of test it out and see how it would go. So we laid down the fabric and secured it with metal stakes that we just hammered into the ground and some big rocks, and tried to water it down to kind of keep it in place. And this was in early spring, and it did not serve us well. The wind and just the extreme angle of the slope, that incline, made it really hard to keep the cardboard in place. It would slide down, it would blow away, and what did manage to stay put wasn't tightly secured on there, so it was still letting a little bit of light through, and so the weeds were still alive and still growing. So that was a bit of a fail. And so then our second method was just going in by hand with a hoe and just trying to rip out all of those weeds and the extensive root systems they had, which was kind of ridiculous. It was very labor intensive, a lot of work. My husband did most of it, and we still only got about a quarter of a way through the area. So not ideal, tons of work. We'll be here for a few years though, so in the long run, I guess if you spread it out, it's not such a heavy workload, but it's still very intensive. Then we tried the Charles Dowding approach, his method, where he just lays down a piece of cardboard over the top of pre-existing grass or weeds or whatever, and then add a thick layer of compost, at least a couple of inches. I think he recommends 3 inches, and then planting your plants directly into the compost. So we tried that in a small section to see how that would work. We put some flowers in there, snapdragons, just a few different flowers. And I think the issue was we went out of town right after that, and it didn't get enough water at the beginning. So the compost dried out completely and got really hard and tough and didn't really allow the plants to grow very much, and a lot of them died. And I tried to keep up on the watering. Some survived, however, they were stunted at that point, and so throughout the whole season they just sat there and didn't really do anything. That was a bit disappointing. I think being on the slope too makes it really challenging. We were just striking out with every method we were trying. So the doing it by hand method mostly worked. Weeds were still coming up, but when we weeded enough to allow the plants that I wanted to flourish grow up bigger, they kind of sort of overpowered and were ahead of the weeds, and so they were able to do okay. There's still weeds definitely that I keep having to pull out, but it looks okay. It doesn't look like a total mess. Unfortunately, I had started a lot of seeds to plant that area. Not completely, but I did have a lot that I wasn't able to plant because there wasn't space ready for it yet. So what did I actually grow there this year? So I have butternut squash and cantaloupe up at the top of the hill, kind of vining and trailing everywhere. It looks kind of pretty. And then below that, I've got a few lupins, they did struggle, dahlias, snapdragons, some zinnias that I just direct sowed the little seeds in, and those came up. And there's a couple proven winter plants like the sweet potato vine and the snow princess. So I do have a array of things. A few things died, definitely a lot of struggle and trial, but that's what I love about gardening, is it's hard, but it's also very rewarding. And the only way, I think, the best way to get good at it is to try and fail and learn from the experiences. And I like to go hard all summer while we have that season and it's warm, and then we get a nice rest once the frost hits, which our average frost is probably coming up in about a week. So a lot of this is gonna die, but I have all winter to kind of regroup and decide what I want to grow and where. And I think it's kind of that case for anybody gardening in a new place, your first year. Things are going to be different, conditions and soil and all that kind of stuff. So I'm just excited that I got to grow stuff this year. I want to share next year how it goes, if we improve on our method and what we get to grow back there, if we get more production out of it. I have been able to make some bouquets, some flower arrangements with the flowers I'm growing out there, in addition to some of the other ones on the deck and in the front yard, but nothing like I did at my house before we moved in. We had built all of these big raised beds and had the drip system set up, and we had tons and tons of flowers, and I definitely miss that, but I think we'll get there. We'll figure it out. So thank you guys so much for watching, and we'll see you in the next one. Bye.